Dr. Anthony Harper here, blessed to be with Mr. Steve Feldman with the ZOA. And thank you, Steve, for joining me. As so important topics that we're dealing with regarding Israel. And ZOA is Zionist Organization of America. And how did you become involved with Zionist Organization of America?
Well, first of all, Dr. Harper, thank you for having me on your show and interviewing me. And it's really a pleasure, and I admire you and the work that you do, bringing the facts, bringing the truth to your audience. So it's really an honor for me to participate in that with you. So I thank you. To answer your question, I was a newspaper reporter and editor and columnist for over 20 years, and the work was not as fulfilling, satisfying for me, and I was looking for new opportunities. I've always been an activist. I was an activist journalist. I worked for a publication that had as its part of its name exponent. So there was inherently an advocacy and activist flavor to the publication and the people who worked there. And when I felt I needed to step up advocacy on behalf of the Jewish community in Israel, and it was just not working for me where I was at, I reached out to ZOA, and there was a good connection, and that's 23 and a half years ago now. So.
Very interesting, very crucial history of ZOA. So ZOA, though, has been around for quite some time.
ZOA began in 1897. There were some groups, Jewish Zionist groups in the United States that came together, and out of that was the Zionist Organization of America. So our roots go back to 1897, which is the first year, or the year of the first World Zionist Congress, called by Theodor Herzl, the father, if you will, of modern Zionism. Some people call it political Zionism. So that was in Basel, Switzerland in 1897, and we were founded the same year. And the first part of ZOA's life as an organization was to work to get Israel reestablished. And we worked very hard about that. And there was a lot of opposition in the Jewish community, which if you want to get into that briefly, we can. But since May 14th, 1948, ZOA has worked to make sure that the reestablished and independent nation of Israel is strong, gets the support it needs, that people throughout the world, or at least in America, which is our portfolio, understand the facts, understand the truth, understand the history, the context, everything else. So we educate primarily, and then we do advocacy. Some people call it activism, to help spread the word and encourage, whether it's news media, whether it's elected officials, communal leaders, whoever, to do the right thing.
You have a lot of challenging issues to deal with. In light of, we've had such a rise of anti-Semitism, and now we have the war with Iran. What are your comments? So important comments about what's going on right now.
Thank you. So I want to take the second part of that question first, which is the so-called war with Iran. It's important for your audience to understand, and I suspect that you have apprised them of this. Iran has been at war with America, with the Jewish people, with the West, including Christians, other religious minorities in Iran. And when I say Iran, I mean the regime, the Islamist Republic regime, has been at war with the West, the United States, the Jewish people, Israel, etc., and even Arab nations who are of a different branch of Islam since 1979. When they took power. So there's not a new war. Some people understand this, some people don't. The places where most people get their information, which is the news media, sometimes glosses over or omits the fact that this Iranian regime has killed and severely injured thousands of Americans. whether it was from the beginning when they invaded our embassy in Tehran and took, I think it was 56 Americans and held them for 444 days. They were freed the day that President Reagan was inaugurated. Some people remember all that. Some people were not around to remember that because it's a long time ago. The media doesn't report on that. The media doesn't report that in 1983 they attacked American embassies in other countries and they blew up the Marine barracks in Beirut and killed, I think it was 230 Marines was the number. If memory serves me correct, might be a little higher. And they've been slaughtering and injuring Americans ever since, including American servicemen and women in Iraq and Afghanistan. Not all that long ago, Navy personnel and ships, the Ansar Allah, which is a terrorist group in Yemen, which people call the Houthis, which is not their real name. It's really Ansar Allah, fired missiles, I think, at a U.S. naval ship or another ship that had Americans aboard within the last couple of years. It killed a couple of Americans. So this is not ancient history. They've been threatening the United States primarily, which they call the Great Satan and Death to America. And President Trump decided it was time to put a stop to this regime. As your viewers and you know that last year, the United States and Israel worked to destroy or certainly set back Iran's nuclear program. Apparently, according to the president, Iran was continuing to enrich uranium and rebuild and keep going with its missile program. And the president determined, according to what he himself has said, that couldn't wait any longer, and it was time to put a stop to that regime and the danger it posed to the United States and to America's allies. So that is the Iran component, the Jew hatred component of your question. And I stopped using the term anti-Semitism a long time ago. And I've been encouraging other people to stop using it. It's time to retire that term for a lot of different reasons. That has been growing for a very long time, decades. I've been calling attention to it. ZOA has been calling attention to it. Other people have. It's not just us. But I think the Jewish community, part of it was kind of on autopilot. And there were other people in the Jewish community who either thought that Jew hatred was a relic of the past, or that you could fight Jew hatred by putting up a sign that says no place for hate. And, there you go, solved it. I put the sign up, solved it, no place for hate. It's like, to use the analogy, there's places, it's, there'll be signs, gun-free zone, right? And there's shootings, So the signs don't really amount to all that much. And they give people a false sense of security. So this has been going on a very long time. October 7th, 2023, when the Palestinian Arabs invaded Israel and slaughtered 1,200 Israelis and raped and wounded thousands more and took 251 hostages. I mean, that all happened in a day. And I think the Jewish community and the pro-Israel community, when it became known almost immediately what was going on, what had happened, not the extent, but certainly that something horrible had taken place, something really barbaric was done to Israelis. I think there was a sense among Jews that maybe now the world will understand what we're up against and have some empathy and some sympathy and understand why Israel has to take the defensive measures and the preemptive measures it took. But instead, because the Palestinian Arabs and their supporters throughout the political spectrum either were aware this was happening, but maybe didn't know when, or that something was going to happen, and they seemed prepared. Because throughout the country and throughout the world, and especially where I am in Philadelphia, the evening of October 7th, the evening that the atrocity was committed against Israel, there were organizations and entities and individuals already planning the next day rallies in support of Gaza. So obviously they were aware that something was going to happen, and they were going to try and take advantage of that to win the information war, the war in the court of public opinion. And they did. They had people, whether they were paid or grassroots, who mobilized, who showed up, who were calling for the slaughter of more Jews, slaughter of Christians, slaughter of anybody who supported Israel, anybody who considered himself or herself a Zionist. And they were very violent. They were very aggressive. They were, it spread very quickly to the universities, where there already was a large degree of anti-Jewish activity, chiefly among some faculty and some student groups. And they seemed to exploit that and parlay that, and began what's been more than a 2-year reign of terror against Jews, against Christians, against other Zionists, and even people who are not even Zionists, who happen to be, at the, quote, the wrong place, wrong time. And we've seen a young couple in Washington shot to death because of this, murdered. We saw people in Boulder, Colorado, who were participating in a demonstration to remind people about the Israelis that the Arabs were holding hostage, set on fire by a terrorist. One later died of her injuries from that. We've seen horrible abuse, persecution, violence, threats of violence, and people who would be otherwise rational completely misunderstand what's going on and invert cause and effect, invert victim versus aggressor. And it's been really something to behold, to see how susceptible a decent, rational human mind is to propaganda, and whatever other techniques are being used, and also to appeal to visceral hatred of Jews, which exists, unfortunately. And we've kind of seen the fruits of that, and it's not over. It hasn't gone away. There were some people who, for example, because there's no more encampments on university campuses, they think, well, okay, it's over. They're not paying really close attention to what's happening in K through 12 schools, what's happening in local politics, what's happening in local cultural organizations, academia. The Jew hatred continues and is getting worse. And it's kind of like a contagion. It spreads like a virus.
With President Trump, the only president that has had this courage to deal with Iran right now. So how do you see his actions in dealing with Iran affecting all these other areas of Jew hatred that you were talking about?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, thank God that President Trump has the moral clarity to understand the danger that Iran poses to the United States. And by doing nothing, that danger gets worse. Okay. So first of all credit to President Trump, whether it's divinely inspired or not, we can't say. Some of us believe it is. Otherwise, it just is, that we have a super patriotic president who understands the danger and is doing something about it. With regard to the impact of that on Jew hatred in particular, I don't think it's going to change very much. The Iranian regime is motivated by Shia Islam. There are multiple strains of Islam, some appear to be more, I'm just thinking of the right word, more prone to violence, let's put it this way, to advance what they want to advance, as opposed to other ways that Islam spreads. And so you've got other perpetrators of this violence who will actually probably be emboldened and strengthened, because the balance of power is going to change. Whether it's Qatar, whether it's Turkey, from the state actors, the Islamic resistance movement and the Muslim Brotherhood, who are more frequently known as Hamas, or Hezbollah in Lebanon, or Ansar Allah, which is called popularly the Houthis in Yemen, or other forces or individuals or lone wolves. They're not going away. They're changing. They're not changing, rather. They're there. The people in America who participate in what I call Palestinianism, to harm Jews, harm Israel, harm Zionists, to advance Palestinianism, which is the destruction of the Jewish state and Jews. This isn't affecting them at all. They're going to keep doing what they're doing because they want to destroy Israel, destroy Jews, destroy our Christian friends. So that's not going to change. It may get worse. It may actually get worse because merging into all that are all these Marxists, neo-Marxists, along with the isolationists. So you have this horrible stew of individuals and groups and nations coming together. And now, these isolationists, for example, can now have something in common with the pro-Islamic regime in Iran forces or the pro-Hamas forces, et cetera. So I think it's actually, at least for the short term, going to get worse.
Well, I'm also thinking about President Trump's actions that happened at the Jewish holiday Purim. So what would your comments about the significance of the Jewish holiday Purim? You could explain for our viewers and listeners significance about Purim, what it is, and also interesting to note that we have reference to a blood moon. Many Christians see that as an omen at this time where we have a total solar eclipse. But all these things converging, happening at this historic time. What are your comments about those issues?
So the counterpunch against Iran, or the counterattack against Iran, began Saturday, I guess, or late Friday evening. Purim began yesterday. We're recording this and doing the interview on March 3rd. So March 2nd, sundown, is when Purim began. So it's close, but it's not an overlap. There are a lot of people on social media, for example, pundits, relating the two. The only thing that there is in common, as I understand it, is that modern day Iran was the Persia, not the same regime or leadership, and there was no Islam, back when the actual events that we commemorate as Purim took place. There was no Islam; it's pre-Islam. So geographically, it's the same place, but I don't believe there's anything else in common except that God is still working miracles. In the Megillah, God's not mentioned, but we know that God is putting these things in place. Mordecai is where he is because of God, and Esther is where she is because of God, and we know those are the circumstances. We believe those to be the circumstances. As I said to one of your earlier questions, is what President Trump has done now divinely inspired? Could be. So there's that possible connection. But the timing is interesting. The blood moon, I'm not familiar with, so forgive me. I don't that part I don't know. I'm also not an astronomer, so I don't know what the moon is doing right now, and rarely do I get out to see it. But I'll take your word for it. But I don't know what the connection is there.
Okay, well, I know for a lot of Christians that has been a big issue, is seeing omens and how these events tying together. But also, you mentioned Mordecai and Esther, and
Yeah.
of course, if people want to know more detail, they read the Jewish book of Esther that
Right.
talks about all of this. And I want to encourage people right now to pray for Israel, to pray for the military, for the U.S. military, as well as the Iranian people that are wanting to be free from all this. And I know we have still a long way to go, Steve,
Yes.
regarding Iran being really a good Iran.
Yeah, I agree. We certainly need to ask. First of all, we need to thank God for protecting those He has protected, and to call on God to heal those who've been wounded, and to protect those who are in harm's way. You know, Israel is still under rocket fire, as are a lot of places. Six, at least last time I checked, 6 Americans were killed. Many were hurt. I think the number is 10 who were killed in Israel by Iranian rockets or drones, and many are injured, and living in fear. So yeah, we have to thank God, ask God for continued blessings, for America, for our personnel, for Israel, and our allies. That's very important, you know.
There are a lot of serious issues to deal with. I really sympathize for those that are in Israel that are having to go through those experiences of anxiety, having to
Well,
face going into bomb shelters and so forth. So
I can tell you that in January 1991, when I was still a reporter, um, I was sent to Israel to report on the country preparing for war, with the understanding that at the last minute, Saddam Hussein would pull his forces out, and there wouldn't be a war. But of course, there was a war. So I was in Israel that January 91 for the first week of Scud missiles that Saddam Hussein was firing at Israel. And it's been, let's see, 26 and 9 is 35 years ago. And if I think about it, I can still hear those sirens alerting us that missiles were on the way and to get into, you know, a sealed room. Back then, there was great concern about Saddam Hussein using chemical weapons or biological weapons, and not only were we in sealed rooms for hours over and over again, but we also had to wear gas masks, and it was quite uncomfortable. You know, you didn't know what was happening. We in America were not used to being under missile attack. Israelis were. It was not new back then, although I think the Scuds were probably the most powerful missiles Israel was hit with at the time. And it was a time of great trepidation, great unknown, and it is the same today. So while I'm not there right now, I certainly have at least a minimal understanding of what my brothers and sisters in Israel are enduring. They get these alerts now. They're on the phone and throughout the air, to get into a shelter. Many people today have hardened rooms in their homes or apartments, or there are community places, or they get into stairwells of apartment buildings, etc., and pray and hope that they're spared. But it is at minimum an inconvenience, and at times can be terrifying.
how about the only experience I had really that was close to this was being in Israel when rockets being fired from Gaza, Hamas firing these, and thinking about in the middle of the night being in a hotel, wondering if one of those rockets would get through and I would have one of them end up in my room.
It certainly is a concern. Look, the first time, and again, I'm going back 35 years, the first Scud rocket attack, I was in a hotel, upper floor in Tel Aviv, overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and we heard the sirens for the first time. You know, I was there as a reporter, and we were not sure exactly. You know, we heard a siren. You know, we didn't know. And actually, I called the front desk. I'll never forget those moments. I called the front desk and I said, you know, and I had been at a party the night before. I mean, only in Israel would they have an end of the world party, because it was kind of clear by the night before that indeed Saddam Hussein was going to attack. So there had been an end of the world party, and 2 o'clock in the morning, sure enough, we heard the sirens, and in the basement of the hotel we were at, there was a sealed, sheltered room, and we were in that room for at least 12 hours. We didn't know if anybody was alive or dead outside of that room. Yeah.
What going forward? What do you see that needs to take place in Iran? What would you like to see as far as a new government? How that to be laid out?
Well, I'm a little jaded. I'm a little suspicious because you're dealing with a lot of factors. I've heard different stats. Iran has somewhere between 60 million and 90 million people living there. And I've heard people bandy about the number that 20% of Iranians support the regime. So that's between 12 million and 18 million people. That's not a trivial number. So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I'm not a prophet, and I can't predict the future. I'm concerned, but I'm more concerned about what's happening in the United States. That people who, as I said a little while ago now, who are otherwise decent, rational people, when it comes to Jews in Israel, seem to lose their mind, lose their moral compass, and Jew hatred is at unprecedented levels. The ZOA is working very hard to educate people, facts, not only our own members and supporters, but the community at large. We do webinars, we send out news releases, we do speaking and presentations, and reach out to the media, reach out to lawmakers, reach out to communal leaders to, first of all, educate people. The facts are important, the facts matter, history matters, context matters. You can't take one development that could be twisted by a journalist or somebody on social media and take that as it came down from Sinai and act on that. So the media is not doing it. The schools have been infiltrated and corrupted by Jew haters, America haters, Christian haters, immoral people. So education has to come first, and then it's helping people understand the need for vigilance, advocacy, activism, to monitor what's going on, to take action, to be proactive. So these are some of the hallmarks of ZOA and what we do. And as the need worsens, and I believe the need is going to worsen, we need people to get involved with ZOA and help us spread the education, become educated, first of all, spread the education, and carry out advocacy and activism for the facts.
I'm wondering about what's going to be happening next in that proactive effort to get people to understand what Jew hatred really is. And there are a lot of serious challenges, I know. I'm thinking about how still, the actions that are taking place in Iran are going to impact, as far as the funding of Hezbollah and these other things, and how that might trickle down to this. But there is a lot of residual Jew hatred that you were talking about that is on the rise, and having to deal with that.
Well, it seems kind of clear that the nation of Qatar is behind a lot of this. The nation of Turkey is behind a lot of this, and so I would imagine that they would pick up whatever slack is left by the Iranian regime being off the scene, out of the scene. Although, again, I'm not convinced that these attacks are going to truly eradicate. They may eradicate the regime, but the variety of Islam that motivates that regime rather, I'm sorry, is not being defeated. It is not being muted. It's still out there, and so you can eliminate some of the symptoms of that, some of the manifestations, but the cause is still going to be there. And how we deal with the cause is something that I don't claim to have the answers to, except to educate people about our enemies and what motivates them and what they're all about. For example, I've heard a lot of references in the past few days of people referring to the Iranian regime as quote unquote lunatics. Okay, those people don't understand the variety of Islam that has formed the behavior of the Iranian regime up to now. And if you have a little bit of an inkling to that, you understand that from their reference point and their frame of mind, it's not lunacy at all. They're trying to accomplish a goal, okay, that they believe they're dictated by God to do. And then without getting into a whole theological discussion, because I have a little bit of knowledge, but I wouldn't consider myself an expert. It's a mistake to write them off as quote unquote lunatics. They are fervent believers in something that seems to be at odds with Western civilization, and how you stop that I don't have the answer to. The only answer I have is to try to mitigate or minimize whatever the impact of that is, and to not let them have access to the weapons that they would use to bring about whatever it is they hope to bring about, which, from the little that I know about that branch of Shia Islam, to bring about an end of the world, an apocalyptic kind of situation, which apparently is what they're longing for.
Now, people can get involved with ZOA. They can help with ZOA. What is your website, and how would you encourage people to help out in the mission of ZOA?
Thank you. So ZOA.org is really the center place to learn about our organization, learn about what we're doing. There is wonderful advocacy materials and resources there. And that address is ZOA.org. You can also donate and support ZOA through that. There are 4 areas throughout America where there are ZOA chapters, local chapters: Florida, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Detroit. So those of your viewers who live in and around those areas, we all have our own websites, and we are all raising money to support our local activities. And people can, if you go to ZOA.org, there is a heading that says chapters, and people can find out about the chapters and support our work and get involved. And I want to just make very clear, we really are grateful for our Christian Zionist friends. You're our partners in a lot of this. You're with us in the trenches, so to speak, and we greatly appreciate your prayers, your activism, your advocacy, your educational efforts as you do. You are an intrepid reporter when you're in Washington, asking questions of the State Department, of the White House, constantly trying to get the spokespeople to address these matters from their podium, whether it's at the State Department or the White House, and shed light on what's going on. So I thank you and your organization, your news organization, and what you do. You really are an intrepid reporter. You're persistent. You're fearless. And as a former reporter who was passionate and fearless and intrepid myself, I admire that in you, and I thank you.
It's great to join you, Stephen, and having these so important issues in common to fight for freedom. Basically, is so much at stake. And once again, ZOA.org for people to get more involved.
Yes. Thank you.
Here is a brief video clip of Greater Philadelphia's ZOA's key projects. They call it the information ambulance because they send it where it is needed to rescue the truth.
The Greater Philadelphia ZOA Information Ambulance, rescuing the truth from anti-Jewish and anti-Israel liars, hatred inciters, and propagandists, and bringing the facts and accurate information to the campuses, to where tourists throng, to suburban shopping centers, to places where people gather, and many other sites, including to the doorsteps of some of the most vicious media outlets and pro-Hamas organizations in our region. For education, for advocacy, for principled positions, and for outreach, we are Greater Philadelphia ZOA, the Zionist Organization of America, the most experienced organization of its kind. Get involved in our chapter. Help us help Israel. Support our work.
And here is a substantial video of ZOA's history and its current work.
For 124 years, the Zionist Organization of America has stood firm as the Jewish people's most reliable ally and protector. ZOA led the fight in the U.S. to re-establish the Jewish state 5 generations ago. In the 20th century, it stood by Israel as the young country matured into a leading nation on the world stage despite all odds. Today, under the 28-year stewardship of Morton Klein, ZOA flourishes as a nonpartisan advocate for a strong U.S.-Israel alliance, Israel's unequivocal right to defend herself, and dismantling policies that threaten Israel's safety and Jewish life. Anti-Israel rhetoric and overt anti-Semitic attacks have risen to alarming levels. On college campuses, on social media, in corporate boardrooms, and even halls of government, open malice toward the state of Israel has become the new normal. The winds of change demand ZOA's unflinching support for the Jewish state now more than ever before. ZOA brings the fight for Israel to 4 main arenas: media and education, government advocacy, student support, and law and justice. The message about Zionism and anti-Israel bias has been clear and consistent for decades. Promote the truth about Israel's right to its land, its claim to Jerusalem, and the morality of its actions in the face of violent threats. Among its nonpartisan positions, ZOA has long held that an undivided Jerusalem and Jewish state, including Judea and Samaria, is just, and that a 2-state solution would create a substantial terrorist threat. Media appearances, leadership programs, events, and educational initiatives organized by the ZOA influence the global community toward greater appreciation for the modern state of Israel and its accomplishments. ZOA has earned the unparalleled trust of high-ranking officials in both the U.S. and Israeli governments through years of relationship building. Full-time ZOA professionals meet with senators and congressmen to lobby for the issues that are important to both countries. Notably, ZOA publicly opposed the Oslo Accords, Gaza withdrawal, and Iran deal, while pushing for the U.S. Embassy's move to Jerusalem and recognition of Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. ZOA officials routinely testify before Congress on key issues such as anti-BDS legislation and run awareness campaigns to support the appointment of pro-Israel officials and combat those hostile to Israel. Over 100 campuses across the country are served by ZOA community building events, speaker series, mentoring groups, educational programs, seminars, and student trips to Israel. In an effort to promote healthy discourse around Zionism and Israel, ZOA President Morton Klein has personally traveled to a number of major universities for speaking engagements to tell the truth about Israel and encourage thoughtful debate among Jewish and non-Jewish students. By training the next generation to effectively advocate for Israel and refute the anti-Zionist propaganda flooding campuses, ZOA works to ensure that students feel safe and proud to express their Jewish identity and Zionism at college. In 2002, ZOA established the Center for Law and Justice to defend Israel in the courts, litigating the most complex lawsuits on behalf of Jewish students, terror victims, Jerusalem's legal status, and other cases with ripple effects for Israeli citizens and Jews across the world. ZOA led the groundbreaking fight to reinterpret Title VI of the Civil Rights Act to protect Jewish students against discrimination, has filed numerous amicus briefs with the Supreme Court to clarify anti-Jewish policies, and fought for Israel to be listed as the birthplace on U.S. passports for citizens born in Jerusalem. The Zionist Organization of America's founders dreamt of peace and dignity for the Jewish people in their rightful homeland. 124 years later, ZOA is stronger than ever, but the fight for Israel's future is still on, and we're not slowing down anytime soon.